very first industries in the county the salt making was. And Mr. Grant, that's the reason the area was named after him. Grant Slick is named after Mr. Grant, who had the first industry out there. Being a school interested in schoolhouses, and did some research on schools, and I found out there were 42 one-room schoolhouses throughout the whole entire county, from the Pelton County line all the way down to the outskirts of Newport. Several of them have interesting histories, but one particular one is the Cold Spring School, which was an independent school at one time, and the building located there has a large second-floor porch. Supposedly, folklore says that Lincoln or Grant, we have never figured out which one, spoke off the porch of that building and gave a campaign speech on the way through. Now, some people say that neither one of the men ever stepped foot in Campbell County and around that school, but it's an interesting bit of history that we've never been able to prove or disprove. A lot of the schools are still in existence because not as schools but as private homes. And in fact, the building that I have, which is a log cabin that I've rebuilt and made into a museum in Grant Slick, is part of one of those one-room schoolhouses. Other than the schoolhouses, one other thing I didn't mention was the fact that we're surrounded by rivers. The Licking River and the Ohio River surround both sides of us, and a lot of people have always said that that was one of the reasons we were isolated, because roads didn't cross the river often enough, and several of the industries we should have had didn't move here. Probably Northern Kentucky University was the first major thing that moved here, but the rivers being where they were allowed the railroads to come down alongside of them, but it also isolated us over the years.
Carrollton, the county seat of Carroll County. Carroll County population is 9,663. Area square miles, 130. Rank, 118th. Carroll County is located in the 4th Congressional District.
This is the juncture of the Kentucky River and the Ohio River, and it was very important that these rivers were here, and this is why Port William, which became Carrollton, was settled in this area in the late 1700s. This area had been the happy hunting ground of many Indian tribes, and they very much resented the white man settling here. As you can see from this barge that's here, this river trade is still important. This is a part of Bristol Steel, and they build bridges around over the Ohio and Kentucky rivers. This is a picture that I've painted representing the way Fort William was in the first 10 or 15 years of settlement. Most of the houses were here on this point. It began with beginning with this point of what they call the blockhouse that was built by the Kentucky Volunteers and protected the settlers from the Indians. With that protection, then the settlers began to move in. This Mr. Hawkins was one of those who bought this entire 613 acres that later was surveyed and made into the town. This is a tavern, and this is a blacksmith shop. These are taken from the deeds of these families. This is the home that Mr. Percival Butler built, and this is where William O. Butler was raised along with his 10 brothers and sisters. This little house here was the Masterson home, and the back room of it was used as the courthouse for the early years of Carroll County. This is a stray pen, and anyone who lost a dog or a goat or a horse could bring their animal and put it in there, and it would be there for them to take. And the stocks were out in front for anyone who was being punished. This building over here was another inn for persons who came and had to live someplace before they got their log cabin built. And the back room of this inn was used as the first jail. As you can see, this is the Ohio River, and this meets the Kentucky River over here. There were docks all along here, and the river trade was very important. I'm Mary Ann Gentry, and I've always lived here in Carrollton, Kentucky. About 4 years ago, I wanted a history of Carroll County, and no one had ever produced that, so I got to looking through all the material I could find and ended up putting together a 100-page history of Carroll County. I still have several copies of it left if anybody would like to have a copy of the history. Quite a number of homes that were built in the early 1800s that are of interest to people. The home of William O. Butler, who was a lawyer and a poet and a farmer, but mostly is known as the general who entered the service as a private and ended up in 1848 as commander of the entire American forces in Mexico. His home is on Highland Avenue. It was built in 1825, and it's been used as a residence for these 160-something years. There's also the home of the first Methodist minister, who is Mr. Henry Ogburn and his wife Charlotte, and their home is now lived in by our circuit clerk, Mr. Johnny Tilley. So that home has been used as a residence for all these years too. It was renovated about 1940-45 by Mr. Quinn, who owned the Cincinnati Enquirer at that time. Another house of interest is the Masterson home, which was renovated by the Fort William Historical Society 5 years ago, and that is used by the society as well as all the organizations in Carrollton if they want to have meetings up there. It's a very cute little house, has a cemetery in the front of it. And the fourth house that might be of interest is the Butler home on the park grounds, although it did not belong to William O. Butler, it belonged to his niece. And the house is now closed for renovation, but we're hoping it will be opened next season. This is downtown Carrollton. As you can see, some of these buildings have been here for almost 100 years. The Searsdorfer building has been in use since 1891. We still have a lot of traffic down here because this is the courthouse square, and many of the buildings that are here on the south and north side of the courthouse have been here for over 100 years. You can tell by the formations over the windows and the way the brick has been laid. This is Main Street looking east, and again we have most of these buildings that were built around the 1880s and 1890s. This was a time of growth in Carrollton, and we must have had some very good architects and builders at that time because these buildings have been in constant use ever since. Carroll County was originally part of Gallatin County and was formed back in 1792. We broke away from Gallatin County in 1838. At that time, our county courthouse had been called Port William, but it was changed in 1838 to Carrollton and was named for the farm of Charles Carroll, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. We thought that was a romantic name, Carroll and Carroll County. This is the second courthouse that has been in this particular area. In the original survey in 1790s, this area was designated for the government part of Carrollton, and we were laid out to be a city. We thought we were going to grow to be as big as Louisville and Cincinnati. In 1884, the second courthouse was built, which is this one right here, but in 1975, the additions were made on the east and west, doubling the size of the courthouse. Over here to the left, you see the old stone jail, which served here from 1880 until 1960, and in just the last 4 or 5 years, it has been cleaned out and renovated and is now used as the office for the Community Development Corporation, sort of a tourist attraction. And across the street from the jail is our new Carroll County Library, which was completed in 1980, has about 24,000 books, has programs every week for all ages, and also has a bookmobile that travels around the county. As we look up Highland Avenue here, you can see some of the older homes that are still used in Carrollton. You can see the gingerbread all around the porches. The church here is the church that was built by the Presbyterians and used by them until about 15 years ago, and it's now used by the Assembly of God, and they completely renovated it. Across the street from the Presbyterian church is the Baptist church, which has a very large congregation, and about half a block on west of that is the Methodist church. All of these churches were built following the Civil War. There are also two other large congregations in Carroll County, and one of them is the Christian Church, which is out 5th Street, and the St. John's Catholic Church, which is also out 5th Street.
Warsaw, the county seat of Gallatin County. Gallatin County population, 4,886. Area square miles, 99. Rank, 120. Gallatin County is located in the 4th Congressional District. I would like to ask each of these gentlemen to introduce themselves to us. We're here, of course, in Warsaw in Gallatin County, and one of the old historic houses here in this area of Warsaw. I'd like to ask Dr. Bogardus to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about this house.
I'm Dr. Carl Bogardus, and I was born, grew up here in Warsaw, so I know the town. This house is known as the Hawkins Kirby House. It was built in 1843 by a lawyer by the name of Edmund Waller Hawkins. And in 1868, it became the home of Captain William H. Kirby, who was a noted river captain, pilot on steamboats. And we acquired the house in 1983. By we, I mean the Gallatin County Historical Society. And we have just now finished restoring it to its, we think, the way it was originally.
And this gentleman to my right is, I believe, the mayor of the city of Warsaw. Mayor, would you introduce yourself?
All right. I'm Mayor Richard Wood from Warsaw, and I've lived here most of my life, all but 5 years. And
Mayor, have you played a role in helping to preserve historic structures here in the county as in your official capacity as mayor?
well, yes, in that way, and also I'm a past president of the Historical Society. And I've always been interested in preservation of our history here in Warsaw and Gallatin County.
Warsaw was established about 1800 as a village called Fredericksburg. It was plotted as a town in 1815 by two men, Colonel Robert Johnson and Henry Yates. This house we see in the background was the home of Henry Yates. And we can mention here that one of our most famous citizens was Governor Richard Yates of Illinois, who was born in this house. Go ahead, you.
This house was built in 1809. It's a log cabin underneath the siding that you see today. Of course, the logs on the inside rooms have been exposed, and you can see the original logs inside. During the late 1970s, well, during the bicentennial of 76, the Historical Society used this house as their meeting place, and they at that time started a restoration on the house. And the owners this year have completed a restoration of the house in July of 1987. This house stands at the rear of the courthouse now, but when the house was built and the courthouse was built, it was standing at the front of the courthouse. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's sort of a tongue twister.
In 1939, they reversed the front of the courthouse over to Main Street, where formerly it faced the river.
Dr. Bogardus, do you want to tell us about this house?
This house is another one of Warsaw's many historic houses. It was built in 1832 by a man named Lillard, and it was lived in by various families until Dr. Lucy Montz's mother Henrietta Dupuy bought the house. And when Henrietta Dupuy died, it passed to Dr. Lucy Montz. She was noted as being Kentucky's first dentist and one of the earliest dentists in the United States. She attended dental school in Cincinnati in 1888, came here in 1893 to practice dentistry in this house, and she practiced here until her death in 1921. This was always an important river landing because Robert Johnson built a road from here to Georgetown, which was known as the Johnson Road, and we still call it that today. This is where Johnson Road came out on the river. The first steamboat to pass here was in 1811 when the New Orleans made her trip from Pittsburgh to New Orleans, and that started the steamboat era, and thousands of boats traveled the Ohio River, and Warsaw was always a very important landing on the rivers. We had a ferry across the river here from 1814 until 1978 when Markland Dam Bridge was built. But the river has been the main reason our town was here. Our courthouse faced the river, and all travel was the river at that time. This is another one of Warsaw's historic houses. It was built in 1868 by a man named Henry Clay Peak, and it was acquired from him by Horatio Turpin Chambers, a Warsaw druggist.
Do you want my hat, sir?
Doc, would you step forward here a little bit and tell us a little bit about the courthouse?
This courthouse was built in 1837. It probably is one of the oldest courthouses still in use in Kentucky. There's maybe another one I know of that's older, but it is the oldest still being used. It was built in 1837, as I said, before Gallatin split off from Carroll County, or Carroll split from Gallatin rather, which happened in 1838. So it's been the courthouse in use ever since then. It was remodeled in 1868 by building a belfry on it. The belfry no longer exists. And in 1939, the WPA remodeled it and changed the farmer front around to Main Street as it is today. It's a beautiful Greek revival type of a building. When Colonel Robert Johnson and Henry Yates laid off Warsaw as a town, they were farsighted enough to allow for a public square, which is what we're looking at here. So that and there was a school stood right here in the corner, the city school or the town school. And then when Gallatin County was made county seat of Gallatin County in 1837, this courthouse was built then. Formerly, or before then, the county seat of Gallatin County was at Port William, which is now Carrollton.
Doctor, how did the county seat get its name of Warsaw?
It was actually named from a book called Thaddeus of Warsaw by one of the founders of Warsaw, liked the book, and he named the town Warsaw after the book.
The town of Warsaw was declared a National Historic Register District from Washington, D.C. That includes 139 properties, which would be the courthouse, numerous houses in town, and business places. And we're quite honored to have that distinction.
Williamstown, the county seat of Grant County. Grant County population, 14,091. Grant County area square miles, 259. Rank, 79th. Grant County is located in the 4th Congressional District.
Well, I'm Virgil Chandler Sr., and I live on Sayers Drive. in Williamstown here, and I'm a professional gunsmith, have been for 20 years, and an amateur historian for Grant County, and I mostly specialize in Williamstown.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
My name is Lee Brian Lanter. I am an attorney. I live here in Williamstown. I was county attorney of Grant County from 1942 through 1977. I held political office for 36 consecutive years, and now I'm practicing law as in the law firm of Lanter and Diffuso here in Williamstown.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Chandler first the question about the formation of the county. What can you tell us about how Grant County was formed?
Well, Grant County was formed from the western part of Pendleton County in April 1820. It was the 67th county of the formation of the counties of the state. Williamstown, of course, is the county seat, and Williamstown was laid off April of 1821, I believe. It was laid off in 25 acres and of 100 lots. That's a quarter-acre lot in 1820, and the first court was held at Dry Ridge, which is 4 miles north of here, in Judge Henry Childers' home, and William Arnold, which being the first sheriff of the county and owned 800 acres of land in this area, donated this spot that we stand on right here for the building of the public square and the courthouse. And only cleared spot in the area, it was his horse mill where he ground his corn and the other settlers in the area's corn. And his house was located, you can't see from here, but if you could see through this building, it would be about 300 yards or so into the northeast or northwest. And he commanded this whole area. His house sat on a hill. And he donated this because, like I said, he wanted to build a town here, and he laid off 25 acres of land at quarter-acre lots of 100 acres. This corner right here, where this parking lot is, was a hotel built there. That was lot number 1. That was the first lot sold in Williamstown in 1821. Do you want to know about the courthouse?
How old is this courthouse, and were courthouses here before this?
This courthouse is quite new. It was built in 1937. Lee could probably tell you about as much about this courthouse as I could on this particular one. Now, we had 3 courthouses. It seems that William Arnold agreed to build our first courthouse. It was built out of brick. It had brick flooring. It was 2 stories. The first jail was over here on Parish Street. The sheriff's office and so forth was in the first courthouse. That courthouse lasted until 1859, when they said that the old homemade brick and so forth started to deteriorate, and they thought that the county was thriving and they needed a new courthouse. So in 1859 we built a new courthouse, and that courthouse lasted until 1937. And like I said, Lee here, he's old enough to remember that courthouse quite well, which I am not. I was born 2 years after the courthouse was tore down and this new courthouse built. But it is said that in the old courthouse, which we knew as the old, not the first, but the second one, that there was in the, where the old jail sat, which was to the northwest of the courthouse in the back lot, that there were names of Confederate soldiers written all over the walls. It was unfortunate that a lot of that wasn't saved when it was destroyed. Grant. Now, there was two brothers, Simon and John Grant. They were frontiersmen, and they were enterprisers. They boiled salt and sold it and so forth. And Simon Grant was a colonel in the Revolutionary War, and he was killed by the Indians in the Ohio Territory in the late 1700s. He was a very close friend of William Littell, which was the representative that represented Grant County when it was formed. And we believe very strongly that Simon Grant is who the county was named after. There is one historian of early times that believes it was John Grant. But there is more evidence showing Simon Grant than John. Dry Ridge is what the old settlers called a backbone, or a ridge running from the Cumberland Mountains all the way to the Ohio Valley. There is no water, no natural water crosses the ridge anywhere in the full length of 22 miles of Grant County. It is, this is a very high elevation, and Dry Ridge, of course, got its name from that. It just happened. No one actually named it Dry Ridge, I don't think, as far as the town's concerned. It just happened to be called Dry Ridge. The settlers, when they drove their cattle and stock and so forth from Lexington, usually from Lexington area, to Cincinnati, they had to carry water, or else they would have to go off the ridge and hunt water because there was no water on the ridge. So Dry Ridge was named for that. And one of the amazing things that happened in Dry Ridge around the turn of the century was the Carlsbad Hotel, which was a hotel and spa. Mineral water was discovered there, and they built this huge hotel. It was around the turn of the century. I'm not sure the exact year. And it burned down in 1927. It was nationally known. People came from all over the world to stay in the Carlsbad Spa.
Talking about history, my great-great-grandfather was born in Grant County, 1797, and my mother was 7 years old when he passed on. And think of knowing somebody that knew somebody was born 1797. So that is history that is exists here today, and there has been a book with the ancestry of William Conrad, published about 10 years ago, I believe it was, thereabout. To promote industry here is an ideal spot. I-75 runs through the county of Grant, and one of the things that we're seeking to do right now is to build the Eagle Creek Dam in Grant County. It extends back into Owen County and almost to Scott County. It would be the location is ideal because of the fact that it's between the triangle of Cincinnati, Lexington, Louisville, and all connected by superhighways, and this lake would be somewhere in between close in Grant and Owen counties, and it would be ideally located for tourism, for and it would be a tremendous asset so far as the economy is concerned. Lake Williamstown, when I was county attorney, was built in 1955, and at that time the assessed valuation was very small. So I had the assessed valuation run by the tax commissioner in 1969, and at that time the assessed valuation was $13 million. So you can see what is done for the taxpayers of Grant County. And we were talking some time ago that if we don't have another Eagle Creek or Lake Williamstown built here, we're going to have to raise the assessed valuation of the property in order to make a budget. That came from the county judge some time ago.
I might add, this will be a future project. We have I say we, the city of Williamstown and the Historical Society of Grant County has purchased the old William Arnold home, and we have disassembled it, and we have moved it to the old Arnold Cemetery lot at the rear of the Williamstown Baptist Church. The old house will, in a year or two, will be completed, and we hope to make a tourist attraction out of this, as well as a museum and a meeting place for the Historical Society.
Greenup is the county seat of Greenup County. Greenup County population 38,236. Area square miles 347. Rank 47th. Greenup County is located in the 7th Congressional District.
Behind us we have the Greenup County Courthouse, which is located in Greenup, Kentucky. With me today we have two local residents as well as public servants for the county. Would you both introduce yourself, please, and what you do here?
I'm Susan Fife, and I work for Judge Claxon as the secretary.
Okay.
I am James Claxon, County Judge Executive of Greenup County.
Okay. Judge, what can you tell us about the formation of the county?
Greenup County was named after Christopher Greenup, who was governor in 1804 to 1808. He served as an officer in the American Revolution in 1783.
Okay. What about some historical figures from that era?
Greenup County was formed from Mason County in 1804, and the town fathers, the vital leaders of Greenup County, were Thomas Waring, Stratton, Jess Boone, son of Daniel Boone, James Hood, and in the Hood home they organized the first organized court and the quarter session of the circuit court. And then they was also active in planning roads in Greenup County, and started having the court in 1804, 1806.
Okay. Jesse Boone lived here, and he was the son of the other Mr. Boone. Was there any documentation of Daniel Boone staying here at any given time?
According to the old records, which the book was destroyed in 1937 in the flood, Jess Boone owned land, and Simon Kitten owned property. There is records in the court house and the clerk's office, which I saw, where he did own land on Tigers Creek in Greenup County.
Okay. What can you tell us about the courthouse, the age of this one, and the courthouses that might have existed before this?
The first courthouse was built of logs in 1807, and it stood until they started to build the new brick courthouse, and it was from 1811 to 1816, and it was in use for 123 years up till the flood in 1937. Then it was torn down, and the courthouse as today was built in 1939.
Okay. Do you know what the general population of the county is?
It's almost 40,000, 39,000 and some.
Okay. What are the major industries in the county?
We have part of Armco Steel, the CSX railroad system, which is one of the biggest private-owned railroad yards in the United States. We have DuPont brickyards. We have Greenbow Lake State Park, which is a nice park with 200 and some acres of water as the lake. We have this is the home of Jess Stewart, and he wrote 100 and some books while in his lifetime.
What can you tell us about Andrew Hood?
Andrew Hood played a vital part in the starting of Greenup County, the court system, the road systems, and he is a great-grandfather of mine.
Susan, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, as the judge's secretary, we are involved with the county's payroll and we work closely with the road department on work orders, getting them over to the road department from, the county people that call in that have road problems. And we're involved with our insurance, handling our county's insurance and workman's comp, and just all the reporting that goes along with the county's payroll.
Okay. Judge, tell us about some other attractions you've got in the county that are historically.
We have several iron furnaces in this area. Some of them are still standing. We have one on Route 2 on Raccoon. We have one at Greenbow Lake State Park. We have one on that's carved out of the base of it is carved out of a rock. That's at Laurel at Old Town. We have one on Brushy, but we have several furnaces in this county yet standing. We have two covered bridges in this county. The Old Town covered bridge was erected in 1881, and we have on the Little Sandy River, and also we have the Bennis Mill bridge on Tiger Creek in Greenup County. It's the longest one-span bridge, I think, in the state of Kentucky. I believe that.
Great. What about hunting and fishing?
And we have the record bass caught at Greenbow Lake State Park approximately 10, 12 years ago. We have Tiger Creek, which has muskie. Fishermen, they do good in Tiger Creek with muskie. We have several streams that does have good fishing, but Greenbow Lake has a wonderful place to fish, plenty of fish, and the hunting is good in Greenup County. Turkey season is in now. We have several turkeys in Greenup County. We have a tremendous amount of deer in Greenup County, but I will tell this, I shouldn't, but I deer hunted when the gun season was in this past fall, and I didn't get a deer, but about 4 days later I got a 6-point buck with my truck, and the front end of it, you can look at it and see it's still tore up.
Judge, can you tell us a little bit about your interests, special interests?
Well, my hobby is collecting arrowheads. I started when I was 6 years old, and I've accumulated about 800 arrowheads in that length of time, and approximately 600 Indian beads, some pipes.
And this is all within Greenup County?
That's right. It's in most of it all is from Greenup County. We have burial grounds in Greenup County, mounds. We have the burial grounds, and which there is still arrowheads being found yet.
And you had said earlier that you just found some beads recently again.
Recently, I found 7 beads and 2 or 3 arrowheads. I sneak off every now and then when I get a chance, and then go arrowhead hunting.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for participating with us in our project.
Cynthiana, the county seat of Harrison County. Harrison County population, 15,667. Area square miles, 310. Rank, 59th. Harrison County is located in the 6th Congressional District.
We're standing across the street from the Harrison County Courthouse. County seat is Cynthiana, Kentucky. To my left, we have Mr. Paul Lau. Mr. Lau, what can you tell us about the formation of Harrison County?
Well, it was a part of Virginia, originally called Fayette County, and then this part became Bourbon County, and eventually became Harrison County. It was settled in 1775. And those people were driven out by the Indians. The next year they came back and made a settlement, and they were never driven out after that. And that was the start of the settlement of this area of Kentucky. And it was Captain Ruddles. They were, the fort was captured and massacred in 1780. They came back in 1781 and 82, new groups, and they formed quite a strong county. Cynthiana was formed in 1793. They had their first court in 1795, and shortly after that, the county was formed. The first sheriff was one of the first people who was in Kentucky, John Hingston, and he was the first sheriff of the county. And many of the old names that are here now are still from the same people. They originally came from Pennsylvania and from North Carolina. Now my people came from Pennsylvania to North Carolina and then on into Kentucky. They were contemporaries of Boone. They lived next to Boone, Daniel Boone's place in Pennsylvania and in North Carolina, and then came here and later spread to the other states. We have many of the original people still represented here. It's always been a beautiful county. They say that this is the most beautiful part of Kentucky. Harrison County is the most beautiful part of Kentucky. It lies on the edge of the bluegrass, and we have surrounding hills. We have a long valley, narrow valley. We have Licking River flowing through it. At one time, we had commerce on the river. Now, of course, we don't have commerce on the river. We still have old buildings that were built here in the 1700s. My people's first house is owned by Joe B. Hall, a former basketball coach of Kentucky, and it's been lived in continuously since 1782 or 3. It's a log house. It's 36 feet long, and it's in excellent state of repair, and people are still living in it. Joe has it beautifully set up. He has a horse farm there now, and we have many brick places that were built. We have always tried to keep the history correct about them, and we're still working, correcting. We're working on a new history of this county. In town we have a great number of old buildings that are, well, they're historical, on historical lists, and people just almost worship them. In the background you may be able to see at one corner of the courthouse there's a log cabin. And this has been a courthouse, it's been a library, it's been most everything you can think of. At the present time, it is a radio station. WCYN operates out of this cabin, and it's in an excellent state of repair, and it's been used every day of over 200 years that it has lived here. And churches, we have our old churches that have been built way back when they started out with a log church, and then in just a few years they became brick churches and were replaced with, if they were replaced or rebuilt with stone and brick. They're old and they have quite a history. We're very proud of them. We're very proud of many of our buildings, and our industries have carried on. We've had great strides in industries. We at one time were the premier whiskey county. This county had 30 distilleries and Bourbon County had 34, and we almost cornered the market. We had some of the most famous brands known at the time, and since Prohibition we've just had one distillery, but it made as much whiskey as the other small distilleries made all this time. We were one of the first areas to bring in shorthorn cattle. We brought in new breeds of sheep and hogs. We've been a very progressive county, and it showed up in our history and in our relations. And many people come here, and like I was born in Bourbon County and never felt at home till I came back down here when I was 19 years old, because all my folks were here. But many people come here and they say that this is the most friendly spot they have ever been. And when people from our businesses, we have a great many businesses from out of state, from all over the country here, and when people from our businesses come here and then they're going to be transferred someplace else, they all leave regretfully. They all love it, everyone.
That says a lot, doesn't it? I have a question. Where did Harrison come from? How did it get its name, the county, and how did Cynthiana get its name?
Well, one of the early people who came here was Colonel Ben Harrison, Benjamin Harrison, and he came in here early, and then along in the late 70s, 1770s, and he came in, and when they formed the city and then later the county. He was very active in this. And Colonel Harrison had this part of the Harrison County, which was bigger at that time than it is now. But the county was named after Colonel Benjamin Harrison, named in his honor. Right near to where the first fort was, there's a vault. Captain Matthias Lair built a vault out of a rock cliff. And this cliff was cut out, and this vault made back in it, and all of his people are buried there from back at that time. And when he got the vault completed and got his people in there and buried there, he went to where the site of the massacre was and gathered up all the bones where they'd been buried in a mass grave. And he gathered up the bones of approximately 40 or 50 people, and they are buried in there in some large caskets. Now these people are mostly buried in iron caskets. Vandals kept bothering the vault, so they did concrete across the front of it. But they have great big slabs, marble slabs, telling who all's in there. Of course, they don't know the 40 or 50 who were buried there. I have some great Uncle Peter that was buried there, but you don't really know for sure. But that's something of local interest, and a lot of people come in from other states. And within the last year, I've had people in from Texas, from California, from Nebraska, Missouri, Florida, Indiana, Ohio, and several people coming back to search for their roots here. And since I'm retired, I have plenty of time to go with them, and I really enjoy it. And I do a lot of work for people that are searching for their roots.
My name's Jack Keith, and I'm Commonwealth Attorney for the 18th Judicial Circuit, which includes 4 counties, Harrison, Pendleton, Robertson, Nicholas counties. My office is here in Cynthiana, but I have prosecutorial responsibilities in all 4 counties for felony offenses. And I have the same judicial district as our circuit judge has, which is those 4 counties. And it's my responsibility to prosecute felonies in those 4 counties. After those cases either come out of the district court or we initiate prosecution through direct submission to the grand juries.
What can you two tell us about Mack Swinford?
Judge Mack, Mr. Lael certainly remembers him and known him significantly longer than I had, but Judge Mack, as we knew him, practiced law here in a private, as a private attorney. Then during the Roosevelt administration, went in as United States District Attorney for the Eastern District of Kentucky. In 1937, he went to the federal bench and became at that time the youngest federal judge in the United States. After he became the youngest federal judge in the United States, he died while still on the bench, although he was not as active as he had been. He essentially retired as the chief judge of the Eastern District. I think Judge Mack died about 1978. Oh, I think somewhere in there, I think. He wrote probably one of the most classic books in Kentucky called The Kentucky Lawyer. And it's a marvelous book on Kentucky lawyers and tales that he'd seen and incidences and funny stories about lawyers and courtroom experiences that he'd had. And it's still a classic and always will be a classic. Judge Mack was a brilliant man, a farmer, a fox hunter, and also a fine jurist, and extremely well respected in our community. Aside from that, he had his son John Swinford is a well-known practicing attorney here and an outstanding member of the Kentucky Bar, served in the General Assembly for several years, and was majority floor leader in the Kentucky House Representative for a number of years, and as I said, still practices in the firm of Swinford and Sims that's still in existence here. And Judge Mack put a real stamp on our community, and as sort of one of our patriarchs that we all think a great deal of, and he never forgot his hometown. And I guess in Kipling's terms, he sat with kings, but he never lost the common touch, and he had a significant dignity as an individual, but he never forgot his folks at home, and that's one thing we'll always remember him for. Mr. Lael remembers him, I'm sure, more intimately than I would.
He also, I think, was the finest Sunday school teacher I ever listened to, and was well qualified to take the pulpit. He could bring a fine sermon, and he always had a little human touch, as Jack says. I know one time he gave a nice talk from a pulpit, but he got to take up a collection.